Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. I'm your host, Dr. Franklin Rule, and today we're going to investigate the connection between the Dogon tribe of Africa and ETs, probe the mystery of the first man killed in the American Civil War, tell you about some fascinating cases of sleepwalkers, report on ghosts at the world-famous Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, and offer some tips on how to photograph a UFO. But first, the Dogons of Africa. They reside in legendary Timbuktu in West Africa, in the country of Mali. For centuries, they have worshipped the star Sirius. Now, Sirius is the brightest star in our skies. It's about 10 light years removed. However, anthropologists in studying this tribe found that they actually worship a small companion star to Sirius named Sirius B. And this is where the mystery comes into play. Their tribal elders, in passing down the legends of Sirius B, revealed knowledge of key facts about that star, discovered only recently by modern astronomers. For example, they know that it is white. They know that it occupies an elliptical orbit about the main star, Sirius, and they know that its orbital period about that star is 50 years. Closer analysis reveals that they actually claim that gods, known as nomos, came from the region of Sirius B and landed on Earth in eggs. The Dogon described these entities as being part fish, part human. Specifically, they had human-like feet and human-like heads inside fish heads, if you can imagine that. Indeed, it's thought that they were actually inside spacesuits where the fish head was actually a helmet. By day, they taught the Dogons astronomy and other sciences and arts. By night, they retreated to the water, to their eggs. So just how is it possible that these primitive Dogons could have had advanced astronomical knowledge? I believe it must have been imparted to them by extraterrestrial beings, perhaps the nomos, who lived on a planet orbiting Sirius B. When we return, amazing facts about the giant crocodile. Please stay tuned. Welcome back, and time now for the mystery of the first man to die in the American Civil War. But first, the trivia question of the day for you. Let me extricate it here from its paper prison. That question: how many men were killed during the 33 hours of bombardment of Fort Sumter? Now the prize, the only prize, one pat on the back that you'll have to administer to yourself if and only if you get the correct answer. I'll take a sip of water and be back momentarily. Okay, I'm calling time. Again, how many men were killed during the 33 hours of bombardment of Fort Sumter? The surprising answer, 0. Now, Fort Sumter was an island fort built around 1830. It was actually never completed as construction continued over the years haphazardly. However, finally, on April 12, 1861, the first shot was fired by the Confederacy at Fort Sumter. That began a steady bombardment of the fort that lasted for 33 consecutive hours. And not a single soldier was killed on either side. Finally, Anderson decided that it was high time to surrender. He waved the white flag, and the Southerners, being the gentlemen that they were, allowed him to conduct his farewell ceremony, firing several cannons as a final overture to the fortress that had given them refuge. But the fourth cannon misfired, and one poor devil, Private Daniel Huff, was accidentally shot and killed. Only a mere private in Battery E of the U.S. Artillery. But he became the first man to die in the American Civil War. And it was accidental. How about that? Turning now to our weird crime file. Two burglars, back in 1940, in the town of Zavroslavic, Yugoslavia, had an intriguing encounter. They had just finished ransacking an apartment and had climbed to the roof of the 12-story building to make their escape. But what did they see when they got to the roof? A woman clad in a long white gown walking towards them on the ledge of the roof. She stared straight ahead, seemingly unaware of the height and the very narrow ledge which supported her. The burglars were so startled that they dropped their loot and hightailed it out of there as fast as possible. Who was she? A corpse? A ghost? Another burglar? No, just an ordinary housewife who had a habit of sleepwalking on the roof. Sleepwalkers, also known as somnambulists or schlafwandlers, are well documented in the medical literature. They appear to be able to do everything in this altered state of consciousness, including raiding the refrigerator and committing murder. We have a couple more cases for your consideration.
For example, one man, Joseph Hurst of Hettstadt, Germany, was a tuba player in the municipal band in 1932. Often neighbors would see him in his pajamas, climb to the roof of his own home with his tuba and start playing in the middle of the night, then go back to bed. He was a sleepwalking, roof-climbing tuba player. In another case in Denver, Colorado, a young boy woke up one night, having dreamed that he had climbed a nearby mountain, stolen an eagle's nest, and brought it home. He thought at first that it was just a dream, until he looked in the corner of his bedroom and saw an eagle's nest.
Just a couple of amazing cases for your consideration of sleepwalkers. Now, for the world's largest crocodile. Recently, anthropologist Carl Fraley of Kansas discovered a huge crocodile skull down in the Amazon River basin. He determined that it belonged to a crocodile that weighed 10 to 12 tons, stood 8 feet tall, and was 40 feet long from the tip of his tail to the tip of his nose. Had they lived during the same era, the great crocodile might have challenged Tyrannosaurus Rex for the title of world's most ferocious predator. Consider, he was 3 tons heavier, although he was much shorter. Of course, the great crocodile had a prodigious appetite, and we have to ask, what did he eat? Anything he wanted to. But I should point out that when he existed 8 million years ago, gigantism was quite prevalent. So he feasted on rats and turtles that were the size of cows. When we return, the day it rained flesh. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Time now for Dr. Rule's Strange Droppings from the Sky and the Day It Rained Flesh. The date, August 17th, 1841, back in Nashville, Tennessee. Plantation owner B.M. Chandler was chatting with a neighbor when a slave ran up frantically, saying that something strange was happening in a nearby field.
First, Chandler paid him no heed, but then he went over to the area that the slave had indicated and found that the field was filled with flesh and blood. The slaves were pointing at the sky, saying a red cloud overhead had dropped it down right on the plantation field. They said the cloud flew swiftly overhead in a sky that was otherwise cloudless. It gave off a sharp noise like a crack of thunder and dropped its bloody refuse on the green leaves of the tobacco plants. This actually made headlines across the country. It was an isolated event, but it was widely publicized.
Scientists from all over descended upon the plantation like a plague of locusts. They analyzed the blood and the flesh and reached 2 conclusions. First, the blood was not blood, but rather some type of mysterious gummy red substance. Second, the flesh was indeed flesh, either from a human or an animal.
There are a few theories regarding this. One is that some sort of red whirlwind had sucked up some animal carcasses and dropped them over the plantation. Or perhaps that red cloud concealed a UFO. The vehicle had collected specimens of either humans or animals, had finished analyzing them, and was just disposing of them, just as we dump medical refuse in the ocean.
You've heard the evidence. Was that strange rain of flesh of a natural, supernatural, or extraterrestrial origin? You decide. Now, we've heard of some ghosts inhabiting the world-famous Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So we sent our intrepid reporter, Carol, out to investigate the frightening details. Take it away, Carol!
Hello, Dr. Rule. I'm standing in the lobby of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, a hotel rich with history, where legends like Charlie Chaplin, Errol Flynn, Douglas Fairbanks, and Mary Pickford once graced these corridors. Rumor has it that some of these legends never left. In fact, inside these walls are some very famous ghosts. One of the most celebrated guests was Marilyn Monroe, who stayed here so frequently that the hotel provided her with her own suite. One piece of the decor is this full-length mirror, where reportedly her apparition has been seen. Here to document the first Monroe sighting is film coordinator Kelly Green.
The manager of the hotel at that time was a big fan of Marilyn, so he had this mirror put in his office. The girl who was dusting his office was wiping the mirror clean and saw the reflection of a blonde woman in the mirror. And when she turned to say hello, there was no one there. But yet when she looked back in the mirror, right where her hand was polishing, there was the face of a blonde woman. And so it startled her, and she went running to the manager and said, "What's with this mirror?" And he said that mirror had been in Marilyn's suite.
The hotel reopened after 2 years of renovations in 1985. 1 month before you actually reopened the hotel is when the first instance happened, is that correct?
That's when it all began. In fact, 2 weeks before we were to open, everybody was here working because we were in a hurry. It was close to opening and we had to get things ready. And that's when we first discovered the ghosts and the presence of spirits in the hotel. I had asked a psychic, why do we have so many? I know that many people have not died here. And he said, no, these people were very comfortable here in life, and so they just decided to hang around.
While the ghosts are seemingly comfortable, these unusual occurrences are still unsettling to guests and employees. On more than one occasion, security guards complained of feeling uneasy while on their routine patrols, as if they were being followed or someone was watching them. This is the Blossom Room, the ballroom that housed the first Academy Awards. It is also home to the hotel's most consistent paranormal occurrence, which manifests as a cold spot in the center of the ballroom. One of the rooms on the 9th floor has been subject to frequent visitations by the spirit of yet another famous celebrity. Now tell me about Monty in room 928.
Well, Montgomery Clift lived here at the hotel for 3 months while he was making the movie From Here to Eternity. So when we were opening the hotel, they said, oh yes, this is the story, and on a windy night you can hear him in the halls. And one of the cocktail waitresses was putting towels in all of the rooms. And as she was working the 9th floor, she went to the end of the hall where room 928 is, and she felt a cold breeze on her arm. She went into the room, opened the door, and the door slammed behind her. Well, these doors don't slam. They have compression hinges. So that in itself was, a little interesting. But the fact that every time I take a film crew to that room, something strange happens. Not bad, just unusual. Film jams in the camera, windows slam in the room, windows that don't slam by themselves. These windows go sideways, okay? They couldn't drop down. I was standing this far from this window, my back to it, watching a TV crew filming in the room when the window slammed shut. There was nobody touching it.
Well, Dr. Rule, the mysteries in this great Hollywood landmark abound. Even today, 8 years after its reopening, the paranormal activity continues. There seems to be no end in sight. back to you in the studio.
Very courageous report. Thank you, Carol. Next up, the world of bizarre medicine. As you know, I'm a PhD, not an MD, but I've always been intrigued by bizarre medicine. Let's see what's in the little black bag today. Aha, a feather. This reminds me of the case of Claudius I, Emperor of Rome. In the year 48 AD, he ordered the execution of his wife, Messalina, for betraying him. He then turned around and married his niece, Agrippina, who happened to be the mother of Nero. He then disinherited his own son in favor of Nero. Shortly thereafter, Agrippina poisoned him. A court physician, in an effort to save his life, jammed a feather down his throat. Well, that feather choked him to death. At least, though, Claudius did not die of poisoning. How about that for bizarre medicine? When we return, tips on how to photograph a UFO. Please stay tuned. Welcome back, and time now for some tips on how to photograph a UFO. Follow me. Now, whenever you're outside, standing in front of your home, or going for a stroll, make sure you carry a camera or camcorder with you, and make sure it's filled with film. Now, if you see something unusual in the sky, whip it out and shoot away. Get as many shots as you can get. Now, for practice. If you see a helicopter, airplane, or even the moon, take shots of that and pretend you're whipping your camera out as though you see something streaking across the sky. Look at those shots after they're developed. See how they come out. See if, for instance, you might need to brace your arm, such as in an automobile, to get a steadier shot. Now, if you ever do get a UFO in your camera, make sure that you try to get a palm tree, building, or something like that in the shot for comparison, so you can validate it. Then after the object is passed, take that same shot without the UFO in it to see, for comparison, how it looks. After the shot, whip out a pencil and a notebook. You should always have this with you. Don't wait till you get home. Don't trust the memory. Write down the details, such as the color, the approximate size, the approximate speed, and the direction it was moving. Try to draw a diagram of it. Now, obviously, most of us can't estimate speed and size too accurately. So use for comparison, say, the size of a football field, an automobile, or one of those helicopters or planes you shot before. Say it was 3 times the size of a helicopter. It's moving about double the speed of an airplane going overhead. Now, if anyone else is around, talk to them. Get their name, find out if they saw it. If possible, have them sign a statement. Better still, if you have a portable tape recorder, carry that with you. Then you can record the details in it as you see it. Also record any eyewitnesses, putting their statements on tape. This is just another way to validate that UFO case. The more details you get, the more eyewitnesses, the better the chance you have of making this a classic case. After you get home, call us immediately at our toll-free 800 number. Don't send the original. Never send anyone the original. Keep that for yourself. Send a copy, because you might just have a valid UFO photo, and you want that original for yourself. Now for some amazing photos of UFOs. First up, the famous UFO of Belgium, taken back in 1957. It's been reanalyzed many times and passed all tests. Next up, the famous Minnesota UFO of 1964. This is your typical saucer-shaped vehicle. Next up, the McMinnville, Oregon UFO of 1951, taken by a farmer, Paul Trent. It has passed all tests As far as anyone knows, it is a legitimate UFO photo. Number 4, by contrast, is the famous Santa Ana, California hat UFO. Most experts think it's a phony. Number 5 comes from 1965 from the space shuttle crew of McDivitt and White. As far as we know, this is truly a legitimate UFO photo. And finally, from 1952, the Salem, Massachusetts photo of 4 UFOs taken from a Coast Guard base. If you should photograph a UFO or anything else of an intriguing nature, please call us on our toll-free 800 number. That's 1-800-45-RULE, R-U-E-H-L. We just may use it, and then you'll achieve a small measure of fame. And that's a lot better than a slap on the belly with a wet trout. Now, until next time, may the power of the universe be with you.